You wake up tired, feel your body heavy first thing in the morning, and realize that no matter how hard you try, that belly fat seems glued to you as if it were part of your structure. What if I told you that your biggest obstacle is not a lack of willpower, nor simply excess calories, but an invisible fire that is happening inside your cells right now? Modern science has given a name to this phenomenon: silent inflammation. Unlike the inflammation you see when you cut your finger or twist your ankle, this one doesn't cause fever or immediate sharp pain. It acts like a metabolic rust, corroding your system from the inside, blocking your fat-burning process, and becoming the real reason behind that persistent belly that no exercise seems to fix. Today, I'm going to show you the real connection between this inflammatory state and the accumulation of abdominal fat. We're going to understand why. While you remain inflamed, your body will refuse to burn even a single gram of stored fat. I'll teach you how to identify the signs and, most importantly, how to put out this fire so that your metabolism can finally function the way it should. Hello, I'm Dr. Harrison Blake. I'm a medical specialist. In 15 years of clinical practice, I discovered that the key to a slimmer waist and a clear mind is not found in restrictive diets, but in restoring balance to the immune system. If you want to stop fighting against your own body and regain your vitality, you are in the right place. Go ahead and click the like button, subscribe to the channel, and comment below. I want to reduce inflammation. I read and follow each one of you. To understand why your belly won't go away, you first need to understand what inflammation actually is. In medicine, we learn that acute inflammation is a hero. If you cut your finger or twist your ankle, the area becomes red, swollen, and warm. That's your immune system sending an army of defense cells to fight invaders and start repairing the tissue. Without this fast and loud inflammatory response, you wouldn't survive even a simple infection. The problem is that this process has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Once the issue is resolved, the army withdraws and peace is restored. Silent inflammation or chronic low-grade inflammation is something completely different. Imagine that instead of a quick battle to extinguish a fire in one room, you had small embers hidden inside the walls of the entire house, burning day and night without stopping. It doesn't cause the sharp pain that sends you running to the hospital, nor does it create a high fever. It operates below your pain radar. In 15 years of clinical practice, I explained to my patients that silent inflammation is like invisible rust that gradually corrodes your cells, your arteries, and especially your ability to burn fat. In this state, your immune system is permanently activated, but in a disoriented way. It begins releasing substances called pro-inflammatory cytokines into your bloodstream continuously. These substances travel throughout your body and dirty the communication between your hormones and your cells. It's as if there were constant radio interference inside your metabolism. Your brain stops hearing the signals of fullness, and your cells stop responding to insulin. The result? Your body enters a state of permanent biological stress. But why does the body do this? The modern lifestyle, filled with ultra-processed foods, lack of sleep, chronic stress, and physical inactivity, constantly sends danger signals to our cells. The body interprets this toxic load and mental stress as continuous physical aggression. Since it cannot solve the root cause, it keeps the defense system turned on at a low level, which gradually wears down the engine of your metabolism. The danger of silent inflammation is that it alters what we call the biological terrain. In an inflamed terrain, nothing works properly. Your energy plants, the mitochondria, become inefficient. Your liver becomes overloaded trying to filter the byproducts of this internal fire. And the most visible sign that this terrain is unhealthy is precisely the accumulation of fat in the abdominal region. Your belly is not just a storage site for calories. It becomes a preferred deposit for this invisible fire. As long as your body remains in this constant state of alert, it will refuse to release energy because it believes it must save everything it has for a war that seems to have no end. Many people think of fat as a dead tissue, as if it were a sack of sand we carry around our waist. But modern science has shown us something much more complex and, to be honest, a little frightening. Visceral fat, the kind that sits deep inside your muscles and wraps around your organs, is not just an energy reserve. It behaves like a living, pulsating inflammatory organ. When your abdominal fat cells grow too large, they begin to suffer from a lack of oxygen and space. They become stressed, And in this state, they start releasing chemical substances called pro-inflammatory cytokines. Imagine that every fat cell in your belly is a small factory producing chemical smoke. That smoke enters your bloodstream and spreads inflammation throughout your body. The problem is that this very inflammation signals to your brain and your pancreas that the body is under attack. And how does the body react to an attack? It increases the production of insulin and cortisol. As we discussed before, high insulin is a storage hormone. It blocks fat burning and orders the body to store every calorie you eat. Where? Exactly in the abdominal region, where receptors for these hormones are more abundant. This is where the vicious cycle closes in a cruel way. The belly creates inflammation. The inflammation generates insulin resistance. Insulin resistance makes the belly grow, and the larger belly creates even more inflammation. It's a fire that feeds itself. In 15 years of clinical practice, I see patients who say, "Doctor, I eat like a bird and my belly just keeps growing." And they're not lying. When you're trapped in this cycle, your body loses the biological ability to use fat as fuel. It enters safety mode, locking the energy vault and throwing away the key until the fire is brought under control. This constant inflammatory state also contaminates your hormonal receptors. You know that uncontrollable craving for sweets in the late afternoon? Or that hunger that doesn't go away even after a full meal? That is inflammation preventing the satiety hormone, leptin, from reaching your brain. Your brain becomes deaf to the signal that you already have plenty of stored energy in your belly. It thinks you are starving because the smoke of inflammation is blocking communication. So it forces you to eat more, providing even more raw material for the visceral fat factory to keep operating. In addition, the silent inflammation coming from the belly attacks your liver. Since visceral fat is directly connected to the liver through the portal vein, all those inflammatory cytokines bombard your main filter 24 hours a day. The inflamed liver becomes slow, fatty, and inefficient at processing toxins and sugars. This explains why, after age 40 or 50, losing belly fat becomes an almost impossible mission for those who focus only on calories. It's not about mathematics. It's about chemistry. Until you break this inflammatory cycle, your body will continue prioritizing abdominal fat storage as a way to isolate the inflammatory problem it created itself. Often, a patient arrives at my office with a list of complaints that seem unrelated. They say, "Doctor, I've been forgetful, my joints hurt when I wake up, my sleep doesn't feel restorative, and no matter how much I rest, I feel heavy." In 15 years of medicine, I've learned to look at these symptoms as a dashboard of an inflamed body. The silent inflammation that begins in your abdominal fat doesn't stay restricted to the abdomen. It spills over and affects every system in your body, sending warning signals that most people ignore or confuse with normal aging. One of the most common signs is what we call brain fog. You feel like your thinking is slow, you have difficulty concentrating, or you forget simple words in the middle of a sentence. This happens because the inflammatory cytokines produced in your belly can cross the blood-brain barrier, which normally protects your brain. Once inside, they inflame your neurons, making synaptic communication more difficult. Your brain isn't old. It's operating in a chemically polluted environment created by visceral fat. Another classic sign is migrating joint pain. That knee pain that appears one day, disappears, and later becomes shoulder or lower back pain. Many times it isn't a physical injury, but systemic inflammation attacking the synovial membranes of your joints. Your body becomes so sensitive due to the inflammatory state that even small pressure turns into pain. If you wake up feeling stiff, as if your body needs oil in the gears to start the day, your body is shouting that inflammation levels are too high. We also can't forget about non-restorative sleep. You sleep 7 or 8 hours, but wake up feeling like you were hit by a truck. Silent inflammation raises levels of cortisol, the stress hormone, during the night. Cortisol should be low so you can enter deep and restorative sleep, but the toxin factory in your belly keeps the system on alert. Without deep sleep, your body cannot perform the metabolic cleanup it needs, which increases insulin resistance the next day, once again closing the abdominal fat cycle. There's also the issue of persistent fluid retention, that feeling of always being bloated, with sock marks on your ankles or difficulty removing your ring at the end of the day. This isn't just excess salt. It's your lymphatic system overloaded trying to deal with the byproducts of inflammation. The body retains water to dilute the inflammatory toxins circulating in the blood. That's why, when we begin an anti-inflammatory protocol, many patients lose 2 or 3 pounds in the first week. It wasn't pure fat. It was the inflammation-related edema leaving the body. Finally, pay attention to your skin and your gut. Constipation, or excessively loose stools, constant gas, and bloating are signs that your intestinal barrier is compromised, what we call leaky gut. An inflamed intestine allows toxins to pass into the bloodstream, feeding the fat around your belly. If you experience adult acne, skin redness, or dark bags under your eyes, your body may be trying to expel the internal toxicity of metabolism blocked by inflammation. Identifying these signs is the first step towards stopping the treatment of symptoms and starting to focus on the real cause, the fire around your waist. To put out a fire, the first rule is to stop feeding the flames. In the case of silent inflammation, there are triggers in our daily lives that keep the immune system in a permanent state of war. The first and perhaps most dangerous villain is the excessive consumption of refined vegetable oils, such as soybean, corn, and sunflower oils. These oils are extremely rich in omega-6, a fat that in excess is highly pro-inflammatory. Most processed foods and restaurant meals are prepared with these oils because they are cheap, but for your abdominal fat cells, they are like oxygen to a fire. They oxidize inside your body, irritating the walls of your arteries, and signaling to the body that it should store more energy as protection. Another silent villain is hidden sugar. I'm not just talking about the sugar you add to your coffee, but refined carbohydrates that turn into glucose in your bloodstream within minutes. White bread, pasta made from refined wheat flour, and even industrialized fruit juices. Every spike in glucose generates a spike in insulin, and insulin, when constantly elevated, acts like a chemical messenger telling the body, stop burning fat and inflame the tissues. This excess sugar caramelizes your proteins in a process called glycation, which is literally the accelerated aging of your cells. We cannot ignore the impact of chronic stress. In 15 years of clinical practice, I've seen people with impeccable diets who couldn't lose a single inch of belly fat because they lived under constant stress. Cortisol, the stress hormone, is a powerful inflammatory agent when released without pause. It signals to the body that a threat is present, and the biological response to any threat is to store energy in the belly for a possible emergency. In addition, stress alters your intestinal microbiota, favoring the growth of bacteria that produce inflammatory toxins, tightening the siege against your metabolism. The lack of restorative sleep is also a critical trigger. A single night of poor sleep can increase your insulin resistance the next day to levels similar to those of a pre-diabetic person. During sleep, your body should perform autophagy, a kind of cellular recycling where damaged and inflamed parts are eliminated. Without deep rest, metabolic waste accumulates, the fire of inflammation grows, and your desire for calorie-dense and inflammatory food skyrockets, as the brain seeks quick energy to compensate for fatigue. Finally, there is inflammatory sedentary behavior. Sitting for many hours in a row causes your muscles, which are producers of anti-inflammatory substances, to remain inactive. A muscle that isn't moving is a muscle that doesn't clean sugar from the bloodstream, leaving that task to the liver and abdominal fat, which, as we've seen, only worsens the situation. Understanding these villains is liberating because you realize that your belly is not a genetic destiny, but the result of an internal environment that has been thrown out of balance. Now that we have identified who is pouring gasoline on the fire, let's learn how to use the right extinguishers to restore balance. The first and most powerful fire extinguisher you can offer your body is omega-3. If refined vegetable oils are gasoline, omega-3 is an ice bath for your cells. It acts directly on the membrane of fat cells, helping stabilize inflammation and improving hormonal communication. You can find this ally in fatty fish, such as sardines and salmon, but supplementation is often necessary to reach the therapeutic dose capable of reversing years of silent inflammation. When omega-3 levels rise, the fog of inflammation begins to clear, and your brain starts hearing satiety signals again. The second pillar of our protocol is the use of powerful spices, with special emphasis on turmeric and ginger. Curcumin, the active compound in turmeric, is one of the most studied natural substances in modern medicine because of its ability to block inflammatory pathways, such as NF-κB. By including these roots in your routine, whether in juices, seasonings, or teas, you provide your liver with the support it needs to process the inflammatory cytokines coming from the belly. It's as if you were sending a cleanup crew to the areas most affected by the metabolic fire. Another crucial point is nutritional density and polyphenol. Vibrant foods such as extra virgin olive oil, avocado, green tea, and cruciferous vegetables like broccoli and kale contain compounds that protect your mitochondria. Remember, fat is only burned inside healthy mitochondria. If they are rusted by inflammation, you can exercise all you want and the fat will not budge. These nutrients work by cleaning the energy plants of your body, allowing visceral fat burning to resume naturally and without suffering. We cannot talk about reducing inflammation without mentioning strategic rest and stress management. It's not about having no problems, but about how your body reacts to them. Simple practices such as sleep hygiene, turning off screens 2 hours before bedtime, and ensuring a dark environment allow your body to produce melatonin, which is the most powerful antioxidant we have. Melatonin cleans inflammation from the brain and helps lower nighttime cortisol, which is essential for shrinking abdominal fat while you sleep. Finally, intelligent movement. Strength training, even when done at home using your body weight, signals your muscles to produce anti-inflammatory myokines. A moving muscle is a natural pharmacy that fights the belly fire. When you combine protective nutrition with rest and movement, you take your body out of survival mode. Once the fire is under control, fat is no longer necessary as protection, and your metabolism finally feels safe enough to release the stored reserves. We've reached the end of this lesson, and my mission today was to show you that your persistent belly is not a sentence of fate, but a sign that your body is fighting an internal fire. The connection between silent inflammation and abdominal fat is real, profound, and fortunately reversible. By reducing inflammation in your system, you're not just seeking a smaller number on the scale or thinner waist. You're reclaiming your mental clarity, your energy, and your longevity. Understand that true weight loss is a consequence of health, not the other way around. When you extinguish the embers of inflammation, your metabolism finally awakens, and the fat that once seemed glued to you begins to melt naturally. I'm Dr. Harrison Blake. If this content made sense to you and gave you hope that it is indeed possible to regain control of your body, share this video. Let's spread this message of health to more people. Leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and comment below. My journey has begun. Remember, your body is your home. Take good care of it. I'll see you in the next video.